At that moment, within the Skivale Ice Palace, the several sages fixed their eyes on the scene in the water mirror, only to see Fang Chen actually pressing down on an old man, kissing and groping him. Everyone was instantly paralyzed, like clay statues on the spot. Even the great sage couldn't help but avert his gaze, feeling as if his eyes had suffered immense defilement. Sage Wushan, his hair fully silvered, subconsciously placed his hands behind his back, discreetly shielding his own rear. A female sage turned her face aside and spat, done playing with women, so now you start on old men, is that it? Thankfully, shortly afterward, they finally discovered that Iceheart was a woman in disguise, and only then did they breathe a long sigh of relief. Sage Wushan, fully relaxed and cursed angrily, this Fang Chen, his Tao body has entered sagehood, yet he turned the myriad ice profound pool upside down. This debt must be settled clearly. Everyone looked toward the ice pool and discovered that the ice flames in the myriad ice profound pool had already been depleted by more than half, and most of the various profound ice floating in the pool had been damaged. The sight made their hearts ache with physical distress. Those were all supreme treasures containing the laws of the Ice Tao, the precious treasures of the entire ice realm. The great sage also showed a look of regret, but waved his hand and said, "Forget it, he's one of us, there's no need to quibble." Only then did everyone feel slightly better in their hearts. Sacrificing so many treasures in exchange for a true steel and a powerhouse whose Tao body has entered sagehood, why not be happy? Within the ice pool, Fang Chen, having achieved his body refinement goal, calculated the time with his fingers and found that he had been in the ice realm for a full 13 days. We've delayed too long. The other 9 worlds may not hold out until I arrive. I must set off immediately. Just as he was about to leave, suddenly, a large bubble surged up from the devastated ice pool. Immediately after, with a splashing surge, a chunk of ice, the size of a human head, slowly floated up from the bottom. At first, Fang Chen paid no attention, thinking it was just a mundane piece of profound ice. But then, a terrifying ice flame spread from it, instantly igniting the entire surface of the ice. And this was only the beginning. It seemed to contain an inexhaustible supply of ice flame, ready to burst forth at any moment. Fang Chen's expression changed drastically, and he instantly understood what it was. A piece shed from the Realm Embryo. A whole chunk of Realm Embryo shed, the size of a head. Feng Ling Xiao and the others had fought tooth and nail over a particle of Realm Embryo as small as dust, and even 2 alien sages had fallen because of it. Right before his eyes, such an enormous piece had directly rolled up. However, sensing the terrifying ice flame about to erupt from the Realm Embryo shed, how could he dare leave Lotus Platform no? One. Much less dare to entertain any designs on it. Equally tense were the sages in front of the ice mirror. Sage Wushan exclaimed in shock. Such a large piece of Realm Embryo shed, it must have fallen off because Fang Chen's breakthrough caused the Realm Embryo to tremble. If Fang Chen picks it up, won't our ice realm suffer a huge loss? The other sages also became worried, one after another. It would be no problem if a speck or 2 of dust were taken, but such a huge piece would certainly damage the Realm Embryo. Thankfully, they found that Fang Chen was helpless against the Realm Embryo shed, and only then did they relax a little. Suddenly, a dense gurgling of bubbles came from the ice pool again, and then pieces of Realm Embryo shed of varying sizes floated up from the bottom, one after another. At this, even the great sage could no longer sit still, and said gravely, "More than half of the Realm Embryo has shed. How could it be this serious?" He regretted not stopping Fang Chen from breaking through inside the Realm Embryo, causing such severe consequences. But on second thought, he couldn't help stroking his beard and laughing. Heaven aids our ice realm. The sages were all worried. Hearing the great sage say this, they all frowned. Sage Wushan reacted first, suddenly enlightened. We can completely keep the true steel on Fang Chen. Even if people from Middle-earth come, it will be useless. Everyone followed his gaze and saw the countless Realm Embryo sheds emerging from the ice pool, releasing terrifying cold energy, freezing the entire interior of the iceberg solidly together. The intensity of this cold energy before them was actually the sum total of the cold energy released by the Realm Embryo over the past 100 years. The ice formed by this congelation, let alone Fang Chen, who just attained Sage Tao body, even experts of the 3 calamities realm would struggle to break open. Fang Chen, along with the true steel on him, would be frozen forever within the iceberg. Even if all the experts of Middle-earth gathered, they could never hope to rescue him. Hearing this, all the sages except Sage Bai Yan, who sighed inwardly, had their eyes light up. They could easily obtain the true steel without any worries. On Lotus Platform No, 1. Fang Chen's face was as dark as water. Could he actually be sealed within the Realm Embryo? The powerful cold energy penetrated everywhere, suppressing him so that many of his powers could not be fully unleashed. After a moment's contemplation, he took out a small black bottle. What the bottle contained was the last portion of Dao's slave foul blood. He wondered if this blood could corrode this frozen world before him. Just as he was about to try, he suddenly had a feeling and probed his consciousness into his spatial storage device. He frowned slightly upon discovering that the brand new Dragon Pearl, condensed from a fragment of the 9 Dragon Pearls of Middle-earth, was now emitting 9 different brilliant lights. Why did it suddenly stir? Looking at the drifting, endless Realm Embryo of the Ice Realm before him, and recalling how the ancient Saint Divine Steel had specially forged a new Realm Embryo for him, a conceit couldn't help but arise in his mind. Could it be that the ancient saints hoped Fang Chen, traveling across myriad heavens, could collect some Realm Embryos to bring back? And this new Realm Embryo possesses the ability to absorb other Realm Embryos. With this question, Fang Chen took out the Dragon Pearl. As soon as the Dragon Pearl appeared, the 9 rays of light on it immediately condensed into tentacles, then swept away the pieces of Realm Embryo shed like a whirlwind sweeping away clouds, pulling all of them into the Dragon Pearl. In the blink of an eye, all the Realm Embryo shed in the ice pool vanished completely. Fang Chen blinked, stunned on the spot. He felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as if at a feast he hadn't even lifted his chopsticks when the dishes were seized clean by a pack of ravenous ghosts. However, his conjecture was confirmed. The ancient saints granting him a new Realm Embryo was clearly aimed at seizing the Realm Embryos of others. Fang Chen was speechless. These ancient saints were truly all black-hearted. However, the Ice Realm had been relatively friendly to him so far. It was ultimately inappropriate to seize so many Realm Embryos without cause. However, the pieces of Realm Embryo shed, absorbed into the Dragon Pearl, should be handed over to the Ice Realm's great sage to deal with in person. If he released them now, he would be frozen here again. With that thought, he easily left the spot. Then, Fang Chen's gaze swept the firmament like lightning. A sage body's vision possessed extreme penetrative power, and he keenly spotted the Ice Palace hidden deep within the firmament. He attempted to activate a sage's unique ability, transforming from solid to void, covering 10,000 miles in a flash of light. His body immediately turned into nothingness. However, thousands of zhang away, he suddenly plunged out of the void heavily, crashing down onto the ground and smashing a giant human-shaped crater into it. He hurriedly spat out the sand in his mouth, making several PFFT sounds, then sheepishly glanced around, his old face slightly reddening. That was rash. Only then did he realize a fatal problem. His soul cultivation was still stuck at the heaven, man 4 Decay's realm. Right now, he was like an ant wearing an elephant's armor. He looked immensely powerful, but couldn't unleash the strength he should. Fang Chen coughed dryly, obediently put on the myriad earth heart, and mocked himself. It's not that transforming solid to void is unaffordable. It's that the myriad earth heart offers better value. After giving himself this justification, he immediately activated the myriad earth heart and continued on his way. At such an embarrassing scene, the Ice Realm sages before the Ice Mirror couldn't laugh at all. Their expressions froze in unison. No one had expected that Fang Chen would actually take out a Middle-earth Dragon Pearl. Not only did he successfully break free, but he also took away more than half of the Ice Realm's Realm Embryo in one fell swoop. Sage Wuxian's face turned ashen, and he said gravely, "Great Sage, we must not let this brat leave." Another sage followed up coldly. "He cultivated using our Ice Realm's Realm Embryo, and now he seizes half of the Realm Embryo. This is outrageous." Yet another sage, burning with fury, echoed, "Great Sage, this brat has gone too far." Sage Bai Yan, off to the side, rolled his eyes inwardly, thinking, "All of you tried to pull a fast one and ended up losing the rice to boot. Completely losing your composure. With a hint of schadenfreude, he clasped his hands toward the Great Sage and said, "Great Sage, you should still release him as agreed. Fellow Taoist Fang is a reasonable person. He will return the world embryo he inadvertently took." The Great Sage sat upon the ice throne, silent and unmoved. Shortly after, the ground in the center of the hall slowly squirmed, and Fang Chen condensed his form from it. With a grateful expression, he bowed deeply toward the Great Sage and declared loudly, "Fang Chen of the Central Plains, thanks the Great Sage for his grace." The difficulty of advancing the Tao body into the Sage Realm far exceeded imagination. Without the world embryo of the Ice Realm, he would have absolutely no hope in the short term. The Great Sage, shrouded in icy mist, spoke in a hoarse and gentle voice. "Your meritorious deeds are boundless. the Ice Realm should express its gratitude. As he finished, he lightly tapped the armrest with his finger, and a tightly intertwined cluster of law chains that caused the entire Ice Palace to tremble suddenly hovered before Fang Chen. That was precisely the 3 Calamities Realm law chains that had been promised to Fang Chen. Joy appeared on Fang Chen's face. With this law, he could reignite the yellow good of the primordial heaven, imprisoning good, and when he encountered a great enemy of the 3 Calamities Realm again, he would possess the power to suppress them. Fang Chen bowed gratefully once more and carefully stowed away the law chains. Then, with a flip of his palm, he solemnly held up the dragon pearl. Fang Chen declared, "I inadvertently sucked your realm's world embryo into it. Now, I will return it to the Ice Realm." He slightly bowed and added, "I ask the great sage to accept it." However, just as Fang Chen was about to activate the dragon pearl, the great sage's emotionless voice sounded blandly. The great sage said, "That won't be necessary. You may keep it." Upon hearing this, Fang Chen couldn't help but be stunned, almost unable to believe his ears. Over half of the world embryo, this vast ice realm, all given to him. Even if he were confused, he now understood that this gesture held deeper meaning. Fang Chen swept his gaze around, passing over the icy, sharp gazes of Sage Wuxian and the 3 other sages, and finally landed on Sage Beiyan's eyes, which could not conceal the shame, and he understood immediately. He suppressed the turmoil in his heart and asked calmly, "Is the Ice Realm intending to keep me and the war exemption steal?" At these words, the great sage remained silent. The other sages were all silent as well. Only Sage Wuxian, with his hands behind his back, spoke in a hoarse voice. "Young friend Fang exaggerates." He paused, then slowly added, "We of the Ice Realm cherish talent. We merely wish for you to stay a few more days." "A few more days?" Fang Chen sneered inwardly. It was probably for 1,000 years, wasn't it? He shook his head slightly, let out a soft sigh, and a look of undisguised disappointment appeared in his eyes. Fang Chen sighed, "Knowing you would covet my war exemption steel, I still came." He paused, his tone turning heavy, "But in the end, you still disappointed me." As his words fell, Sage Beiyan to the side felt immense shame. He abruptly bent his waist and bowed deeply toward Fang Chen. Sage Beiyan said in pain, "It is I who have let down fellow Taoist Fang." Fang Chen looked at him, then surveyed all the sages present, his words resounding, "What your Ice Realm has let down is not me." He took a deep breath, his voice suddenly rising. "It is all those who still harbor the common people in their hearts and wish to give all living beings some benevolent shelter." Imagine, if all worlds were as ungrateful as the Ice Realm, then the myriad realms of the universe would surely usher in a dark age where everyone would be in constant peril. At that time, would anyone still pity the common people outside their own realm? The gazes of several sages flickered slightly, and they actually dared not meet Fang Chen's clear yet piercingly sharp eyes again. Only Sage Wuxian still stared at him with an indifferent expression. Sage Wuxian said coldly, "Not killing you is the greatest benevolence of our Ice Realm." He shifted the conversation, his tone turning utterly uncompromising. "If you must leave, then leave behind the war exemption steel. We will then let you go." Clearly, they were determined to keep the war exemption steel, even if it meant bearing the eternal infamy of ingratitude. Fang Chen sighed, his gaze growing cold. "What if I insist on leaving?" Sage Wuxian's eyes suddenly sharpened, and an invisible, heavy pressure instantly enveloped Fang Chen. His voice became extremely grim. "Can you even leave?" Before the words had fully fallen, the other sages had already, without any visible sign, acted in unison. An invisible force instantly sealed this space, completely cutting off Fang Chen's ability to tear open the world barrier and leave. Fang Chen, however, was entirely unafraid. He looked around and said casually, "Do you actually dare to detain me?" As he spoke, his chest puffed out slightly. A dazzling, soul-stealing golden Buddhist light suddenly burst forth from within him, shining brightly. That was unmistakably the swastika, seal personally bestowed by the Buddha. The moment this seal appeared, Sage Wuxian had not yet sensed anything, but the seated great sage abruptly rose to his feet, and the surrounding icy mist violently churned. The great sage's eyes were solemn as he said gravely, "The mark of the Buddha of the Hell Realm." He stared fixedly at Fang Chen and asked word by word, "What are you to the Buddha?" That was the legendary Buddha, the most mysterious Saint Realm powerhouse of the Hell Realm. Fang Chen pressed his palms together, his expression composed, and replied, "I am the Buddha's junior brother." Hearing this, the great sage's pupils involuntarily contracted. The junior brother of a saint. At these words, the other sages' faces also drastically changed. Although the saint's true body does not emerge, the disciples under the Buddha can still freely roam the world. There was no doubt about how powerful the Hell Realm was. Its countless monks and followers were even mightier. Moreover, there was the even more mysterious Central Plains world. If these two realms joined forces to demand the war exemption steal from them, how could their ice realm resist? Sage Bayan, who stood to the side, felt sincere relief from the bottom of his heart. If not for the presence of the other sages, he would have almost burst out laughing. No wonder Fang Chen dared to carry the war exemption steal and travel through the myriad realms alone. With such an identity, law-abiding worlds would not dare to lay a finger on him. Fang Chen was finally safe. However, what made Sage Bayan's heart suddenly freeze was that after a brief silence of several breaths, the great sage slowly raised his finger and lightly tapped. With a kai sound, a law chain as crystal clear as white snow shot out and instantly wrapped around Fang Chen. And the dazzling golden swastika seal on Fang Chen's chest was forcibly suppressed back into his body under the power of the laws. The great sage stepped down the stairs, his voice still as flat as water. The Hell Realm is indeed formidable. He changed the subject, his tone exuding boundless confidence, but Nankian is even more so. At this, Sage Bayan's face changed drastically. He blurted out, "Great sage, are you preparing to submit to Nankian?" Instantly, he remembered Feng Lingxiao, who freely entered and exited the Ice Realm. For anyone else to visit the myriad ice profound pool, they had to slay a giant emperor through a bounty mission. Only Feng Lingxiao could freely come and go in the Ice Realm, and even visit the myriad ice profound pool at will. So, long before the ancient giants descended, the great sage had already reached an agreement with Nankian, prepared to attach itself to Nankian to preserve itself in the impending dark tide. With Nankian's protection, the Ice Realm naturally would not fear the Hell Realm's retaliation. Now it seemed that Fang Chen's trip was simply a trap. Faced with such a desperate situation, Fang Chen not only didn't panic, but instead let out a cold laugh. Nankian was everywhere rallying various realms. How could he not have considered this point? Fang Chen said unhurriedly, "Then you must also live long enough for Nankian's people to arrive." Before his words ended, with a huala sound, a life-storing pouch at his waist suddenly opened. A terrifying, ferocious aura surged out, instantly blasting the ancient ice palace that had existed for countless years into scattered dust. When everyone looked again, a ferocious giant beast, covered in black scales with a savage, bloodthirsty glare, had already appeared beside Fang Chen. This sudden, earth-shattering turn of events made the sages present all change color. And when they fully recognized the appearance of that fierce beast, they couldn't help but gasp sharply. Even the great sage, who had remained unflappable all along, now had a drastic change in expression. His entire body's aura surged and rippled, shattering the icy mist before him in one burst to reveal a transparent face of ice. The grand sage's voice trembled, and he cried out in disbelief, "The heaven-burying sacred beast." His gaze fixed on the colossal beast, he asked, "It actually obeys your command?" According to legend, the heaven-burying sacred beast is incomparably savage. If left unchecked, it could annihilate everything. Yet now, this legendary world-ending beast raises its neck and sits quietly beside Fang Chen like a tamed pet, refraining from any reckless behavior. There is only one explanation: Fang Chen can intimidate it. Fang Chen's expression was indifferent. "I cannot command it yet, only suppress it to prevent it from causing slaughter." His gaze swept coldly over the sages as he demanded, "Now, do you still wish to keep me here?" The entire sky fell into dead silence. Even the grand sage's expression was utterly frozen at this moment. Everyone understood that once Fang Chen released his suppression of the heaven-burying sacred beast among those present, apart from the grand sage who might barely survive, who else could escape death? More precisely, the entire ice realm would be plunged into misery and destruction. The Chinese letter seal was Fang Chen's courtesy, but this heaven-burying sacred beast was his true weapon. The grand sage's eyes flickered several times. Finally, with a fierce wave of his sleeve, he released the law chains binding Fang Chen. The grand sage said in a deep voice, "Return the world core, and you may leave." After only a brief deliberation, the grand sage made the wisest decision. Fang Chen responded with a mocking tone, "Returning the world core to you was possible just a moment ago." His gaze sharpened, and he said coldly, "But now, no. Since they attempted to seize his true steel, they must pay a price for it. Just saying return it, and you can leave." As if the one in the wrong were Fang Chen. The grand sage's eyes suddenly sharpened like blades. With a wave of his hand, he directly tore open the world barrier. The Grand Sage, dignified without anger, enunciated each word. Junior, know when to stop. Fang Chen merely glanced sideways at him, raised his hand to blast open a large expanse of void, and walked out with his hands behind his back. Without looking back, he tossed out a remark. If you have the ability, make your move. Seeing this, the several sages of the Ice Realm were instantly enraged. Especially Sage Wushan, his white hair bristling, roared like thunder. You insolent wretch. He sternly questioned, is your central plains intending to make an enemy of our Ice Realm? Fang Chen snorted in contempt, not caring at all about this threat, and strode directly into the void. Sage Wushan and the others were restless and eager to act, but with the Grand Sage remaining silent, none of them dared to make a rash move. Otherwise, if Fang Chen truly unleashed the heaven, burying sacred beast, calamity would surely befall the Ice Realm. Thus, they could only humiliatingly watch as Fang Chen departed. In the eyes of the heaven, burying sacred beast, a human-like look of thick disdain appeared. It gave a heavy snort through its nostrils, then turned around and walked away with steady steps, leaving the Ice Realm alongside Fang Chen. The Ice Realm sages, filled with shame, watched the man and beast swagger off, yet they dared not obstruct them. Sage Wushan said in a deep voice, not only did we fail to keep the true steel, but we also lost over half of the world core. He asked bitterly, how can our Ice Realm swallow this humiliation? Sage Beiyan interjected flatly from the side, I advised you to honor the agreement, but you thought yourselves superior in numbers and strength. Fang Chen was once willing to return the world core to us, which would have pleased both sides, yet you did not agree. Now you tried to steal a chicken, but lost the bait. You can only blame yourselves. He, who had been suppressed all along, now felt a sense of vindication and relief. You ingrates, now you're getting your just desserts, aren't you? The Grand Sage remained silent for a long time before issuing an order in a hoarse voice. Wushan, go and retrieve the world core for me. He paused, a cold glint flashing in his eyes, and added, and then, kill him. The master of the Ice Realm was thoroughly enraged. Sage Wushan's eyes gleamed with sharp light. He immediately bowed and accepted the order. Yes, this junior understands. At this moment, Fang Chen was already within the boundless void. If they killed Fang Chen in the void, even if the heaven, burying sacred beast, went on a rampage after losing its suppression, it would only rage in the void and could no longer affect the Ice Realm. Sage Beiyan's face instantly changed drastically. Without a second thought, he rushed out into the void ahead of them. Summoning all his strength, he shouted urgently, Fellow Taoist Fang, flee quickly, they are going to... Before he could finish, a low, terrifying thud sounded, and a cold force of law mercilessly pierced through his body. That force was so violent that it instantly blasted him into a spray of flesh and blood, directly stripping him of more than half his life. It was unmistakably Sage Wushan, who was right behind him, that struck. Sage Wushan glanced at him with an icy expression and spat out a few words. You treacherous, ungrateful thing. Then, no longer paying attention to Sage Beiyan floating away in the void, his form turned into a streak of light as he sped after Fang Chen to pursue and kill him. When Fang Chen heard Sage Beiyan's urgent warning from behind, he had already activated that void feather raiment without any hesitation. At that moment, Sage Wushan burst out from that patch of void, transforming into a streak of light and rapidly swooping toward Fang Chen. However, Fang Chen's figure was as fast as teleportation. In the blink of an eye, he actually took the lead and arrived before Sage Beiyan. Looking at the heavily injured, barely breathing Beiyan, Fang Chen's gaze suddenly turned cold. He asked in a low voice, you would even harm your own people. Sage Beiyan weakly lifted his eyelids. His voice was intermittent but full of urgency. Fellow Taoist Fang, hurry and leave, why bother with me? From beginning to end, he had always carried a sense of debt and guilt towards Fang Chen. It was precisely because of this guilt that he was willing to pay any price to help Fang Chen escape. Without another word, Fang Chen simply raised his hand and placed Beiyan into the spatial mirror. He gave a brief instruction to the rebellious youth, ordering him to take good care of Beiyan. Immediately after, just before Sage Wushan pounced, Fang Chen fiercely activated the void feather raiment, his figure flickering and vanishing into the void. Having experienced being relentlessly pursued by Jian San Kuang, he had already acquired a profound and unforgettable understanding of the power of a Three Calamities realm expert. No one could guarantee that the Grand Sage of the Ice Realm did not have heaven, defying means to pursue him. Therefore, of the 36 stratagems, retreat is the best policy. In any case, no matter what, Fang Chen had profited immensely from this trip. One could only see flashes of light and shadows successively in the void. In just a few movements, Fang Chen had teleported away without a trace. Sage Wuxian ultimately failed to catch up, and his face was immediately filled with chagrin. He abruptly turned his head and loudly requested from the Grand Sage, "Grand Sage, please permit me to pursue and kill him. Even if I must chase him to the ends of the earth, I will definitely reclaim the world core that belongs to our ice realm." The Grand Sage's face was solemn. He merely nodded slightly and uttered one word, "Go." He absolutely could not leave the ice realm even half a step. In the myriad realms of the heavens today, those weak worlds are all hiding in corners, trembling with fear, because various powers have already mobilized, frantically seeking opportunities to launch operations to seize world cores from the weak worlds. Among them, the utterly ferocious Death, Dirge Pirates, and the Sin Realm are the most rampant. To his knowledge, some small worlds have already been invaded by them, with their world cores being forcibly snatched away. Although he did not know exactly how they withstood the suppression of those small worlds' holy lands and forcibly seized the world cores. But it was absolutely true that some worlds had already suffered this misfortune, and the fate of such worlds thereafter is not difficult to foresee. In this dark tide, only one path awaits them. That is annihilation. His ice realm must never repeat such a tragedy. Yes, Sage Wuxian received the order, and his form immediately transformed into a startling streak of light, hotly pursuing after Fang Chen. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. At this moment, at the end of the void, the heavens and earth actually emitted an eerie, blood-red glow. A skeletal warhorse, treading upon a suspended blood moon in the void, came forth, its boundless red light dyeing the endless void. On the horse's back, sitting with a straight posture, was a majestic man clad in a black cloak. He wore a cold, black metal mask on his face, and a pair of eyes beneath the mask shot out a ferocious light that looked down upon the world. This newcomer was none other than the immensely notorious chaotic ancient blood Marquis, and tied to the tail of his skeletal warhorse was a long rope. At the end of the rope, a three-eyed black dog's neck was tightly bound. That black dog was unmistakably the big black dog. It actually wasn't dead. Back then, the terrifying spear strike of the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis had clearly blasted the sack to oblivion, yet the big black dog inside had somehow managed to survive by a fluke clinging to life. But now it too had fallen into the hands of the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis. The big black dog followed behind the warhorse, its limbs moving desperately as it struggled to keep up with the skeletal warhorse. If it fell behind even a single step, the rope would snap its neck and strangle it to death. Gazing at the distant ice realm, the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis asked coldly without turning his head, "Is Fang Chen here?" Hearing this, the big black dog hurriedly replied, he is, this time he really is." At first, the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis had intended to impale it with a single spear thrust. But it had a sudden flash of wit, and quickly claimed it had a keen sense of smell that could help the Blood Marquis find people, thus barely sparing its own dog life. But what left it dumbfounded was that the very first person the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis wanted to find was Fang Chen. At that time, Fang Chen had just barely survived a strike from the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis and hadn't fled far at all. If it had directly revealed Fang Chen, the Blood Marquis would have located him in no time. By then, it would likely stage a gruesome scene of killing the donkey the moment the mill is done right on the spot. So it had another clever idea and simply led the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis on a grand tour through the myriad realms, hoping to buy Fang Chen enough time to flee. However, the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis' patience was clearly wearing thin. If it couldn't find anyone soon, it would be skewered to death by a spear. With no other choice, the big black dog had to once again play the part of the treacherous dog leading the way. The ancient Chaos Blood Marquis spurred his horse forward, the edge of his weapon aimed straight at the outside of the ice realm. A terrifying aura penetrated the thick world barrier into the ice realm, causing the entire great world to tremble uncontrollably. The great sage, along with 3 other sages who had remained to guard, were all alarmed. The great sage hurriedly flashed out of the ice realm. As he beheld the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis before him, his heart suddenly raced, and he felt an indescribable, boundless, oppressive aura descend upon him. He quickly bowed deeply and respectfully. "Junior greets the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis." The ancient Chaos Blood Marquis sat high on his horse, looking down at him, and spoke in an utterly cold voice, "Hand over Fang Chen."
What?
The ancient Chaos Blood Marquis had come for Fang Chen. In the hearts of the great sage and the several other sages, a tempest of shock and turmoil erupted. Why would even the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis, a terror that shook the myriad realms, personally pursue a minor figure like Fang Chen? The three sages exchanged glances and silently, with perfect tacit understanding, chose to remain silent. After all, Fang Chen carried more than half of their Ice Realm's world embryo on his person. If the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis caught up to him, wouldn't these world embryos all fall into the hands of an outsider? After a brief moment of thought, the great sage cupped his hands and said respectfully, reporting to the Blood Marquis, "This junior has not seen Fang Chen." Before his words had even finished, a crimson flash suddenly tore through the heavens and earth. It was the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis, casually sweeping the long spear in his hand. As the spear's tip swept past, the thick world barrier of the ice realm before them was torn open with an endless, massive rift of void. Vast stretches of continents, along with countless living beings on them, were all swept out by that terrifying power and scattered into the void. But this was merely the incidental aftershock. What was truly terrifying was that one of the first Tribulation Realm sages standing behind the great sage suddenly froze. A thin blood line stretched from his forehead down to his abdomen. Then his entire body split along that line, cleaving in two. Even the soul, hidden within, could not escape, cut directly into two halves. A sage, killed on the spot in the mere space of a breath. From the corpse, a great volume of sage blood sprayed, splattering all over the two nearby sages. The pungent stench of blood and the warm, sticky sensation made the two sages' bodies rigid, their hearts nearly stopping. The great sage's body also trembled violently. He instinctively reached out to try to salvage his comrade's Tao body. But under the gaze of the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis, his hand froze in midair, not daring to act rashly. The ancient Chaos Blood Marquis, with the dripping spear in hand, spurred his horse to step forward. His colossal black shadow, like the rising tide, slowly swallowed the three people before him. The great sage could barely maintain his composure, but from the throats of the two first Tribulation Realm sages came gurgling sounds of terror. Cold beads of sweat dripped down their foreheads. At this moment, they were like nameless newcomers just starting out, without a shred of the poise befitting sages. The ancient Chaos Blood Marquis rode his horse right up to them, so close that the heavy breathing of the skeletal warhorse blew off the crowns from their heads. The great sage finally could not bear it any longer. His gaze dodged as he lowered his proud head. He spoke with a hoarse voice. Three days ago, Fang Chen of the Central Earth had just left our realm. Hearing this, the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis turned his head to look behind. The big black dog shuddered violently and hurriedly sniffed the surrounding air. Soon it replied, "Indeed, no residual aura of Fang Chen remains." It raised a dog paw and accurately pointed to the direction Fang Chen had fled. He went that way. Only then did the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis lift the reins, turn his horse around, and ride off. Only when the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis had gone far away did the three slowly recover from the terrifying oppression. The two first Tribulation Realm sages quickly wiped the sweat from their brows with their sleeves, their hearts still pounding wildly, their disheveled state entirely exposed. One of the sages instantly vented his fury upon Fang Chen, grinding his teeth. That scourge Fang Chen. He's the one who dragged down Sage Juetao, causing him to be killed by the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis. This blood debt we shall make Fang Chen pay dearly. Another sage added fiercely, "Exactly, if we can't find Fang Chen, we'll go after the Central Earth. Since he caused the death of one of our Ice Realms men, we'll slaughter a sage of their Central Earth in return. Otherwise, where will the face of our Ice Realm stand in the future?" The face they had lost before the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis, they now desperately wanted to reclaim somewhere else. On the great sage's face, intense fury surged and roiled as well. Fang Chen had taken their world embryo and caused the death of their sage. As the master of the Ice Realm, if he offered no response, what qualifications did he have to call himself its ruler? You all, just as he was about to issue orders. In the distant depths of the void, a dark red speck of light suddenly came into his view. In an instant, the entire heavens and earth shook violently. The sky-obscuring waves of the void were rolled up by that speck of light, crazily surging and retreating to both sides. The great sage's pupils suddenly contracted violently, and he urgently bellowed, quickly return to the Ice Realm." But it was already too late. That dark red speck of light seemed to pierce through the boundless river of time and space. The moment he saw it, the speck had already arrived before them in an instant. It was the ancient Chaos Blood Marquis Blood, colored long spear, trailing a long crimson afterimage, hurtling toward the three of them with explosive killing intent. The great sage's expression changed drastically in an instant. With a furious roar, he brought out 3 merit divine steels, and vast ice Dao laws surged out like a torrent, desperately trying to block this strike. A series of explosive bangs rang out. But the ferocious might of the blood spear had already surpassed the great sage's imagination. His law force was pierced through in a single strike by the blood spear, and the 3 merit divine steels were shattered one after another. That terrifying blood spear did not lose an ounce of momentum as it instantly penetrated the great sage's Dao body, then brushed past the 2 first Tribulation Realm sages. PFFD, PFFD. Amidst 2 muffled sounds, the bodies of the 2 first Tribulation Realm sages were directly reduced to 2 clouds of bloody mist by the residual power of the blood spear. In the next moment, the great sage Dao body also exploded on the spot. Only a remnant soul desperately shot out, trying to flee panic, stricken toward the Ice Realm. But just as he was a single step away from the world barrier of the Ice Realm, the terrifying blood Kai lingering on the blood spear silently wafted past. His soul immediately began to rot, turning into patches of despairing soul light that peeled off inch by inch. No, no. The great sage let out a terrified and desperate cry. He could still seize another body and recultivate once more. There was still a chance. He absolutely could not die like this in vain. Alas, the blood marquis of chaotic antiquity gave him no such chance. He could only watch helplessly as his soul withered inch by inch, like the ashes of a burnt-out incense stick. At that very moment, from the depths of the void, came the blood marquis's icy, piercing voice. Deceit against this marquis is punishable by death without mercy. In an instant, a colossal wave of regret surged like a tide within the Grand Sage's heart. Why had he lied? Wasn't it simply because he feared the realm fetus in Fang Chen's hands would fall into another's grasp? Yet initially, Fang Chen had been willing to return the realm fetus to him on his own accord. It was his own greed, covering Fang Chen's truce steel, that had ultimately sown the seed of his own demise. One wrong step, and every step thereafter goes astray. With boundless, bitter resentment, the Grand Sage soul dissolved into scattered motes of light, utterly dissipating between heaven and earth. The big black dog watched, unable to suppress a sharp intake of cold breath. It had often heard that the 7 marquises of chaotic antiquity in the Sin Realm wielded monstrous heavens, scorching might. Back in the era of the great Kaian divine kingdom, they were peerless, baleful marquises who slaughtered heavens and extinguished worlds. They massacred the living of entire worlds, erased the civilizations of whole races, butchering billions until blood stained an entire epoch. Those 7 lords were known in that era as the Calamities. It had believed this was merely a legend woven from the myriad heavens' fear of the 7 marquises. But now, it seemed that legend was no mere fabrication. This blood marquis of chaotic antiquity killed entirely on a whim. 1 grand sage, 3 sages cut down without hesitation, not a single one spared. Now it had no doubt, had the blood marquis not been pressed to chase Fang Chen and spare no delay, he could have casually annihilated the entire Ice Realm on a whim. At that thought, the big black dog spun anxiously in place, howling, "Fang Chen, you damned fool, run faster, that old monster can truly end your life." By then, Fang Chen had already materialized above a small world, cloaked in a crimson glow. This place was none other than the Netherworld realm, the very ground where the fateful karma of the 5 decays of heaven and man lay. Fang Chen exhaled softly, murmuring to himself, "Finally here." All along the way, he had ceaselessly urged his wings to fly at top speed, determined to obtain the Blood River Ghost Flower as soon as possible. He turned his palm, producing a jade slip. It was given by the drunken Grand Libationer to be delivered to the jade-faced fox, with the assurance that she would aid him in acquiring the Blood River Ghost Flower. Fang Chen drew closer to the Netherworld realm, pondering inwardly. He noticed the realm was rife with turmoil, void fissures flickered ceaselessly across the lands. That being the case, there was no need to breach the world by force, which might attract the attention of this realm's sages. Seizing the instant another void fissure appeared, Fang Chen flashed inside. Yet the moment he entered, a pungent stench of blood assaulted his nostrils. Moreover, streams of frigid, murky miasma burrowed madly into his body, instantly triggering his spirit transformation power and the twin forces of the void flow to activate on their own. This sent his already partially uncontrolled physique into complete disarray. Fang Chen nearly spiraled out of the sky in an uncontrolled plunge. Swaying, he steadied himself and surveyed his surroundings, finally realizing why the entire netherworld realm bore that blood, red hue. There was no ground anywhere in sight. There was only a blood sea so vast that even a sage's gaze could not find its shore. A veritable sea of blood in the truest sense. Because all of it, every last drop, was real, actual blood. Fang Chen was utterly shaken, staring at the blood sea in disbelief. He murmured, "Where did so much blood come from?" Even slaughtering every living being in the middle continent and the southern heaven realm would fall far short of filling this blood sea before him, unless one wiped out all the myriad heavens and 100 worlds. As for the murky miasma burrowing into him, it was born from this very blood sea, the unique essence of the netherworld realm. Suppressing such sinister, foul energies was something Fang Chen could do with effortless ease. At a mere thought, a strand of sacred power flowed out from the heavenly abyss, coursing through his entire body. In the next instant, those murky miasmas were expelled through his pores as crimson wisps of smoke. The chaotic forces rampaging inside him subsequently returned to calm. Fang Chen looked at the jade slip in his palm, frowning in thought. The drunken grand libationer said to give this to the jade, faced Fox, but where is she, and who is she? In such a vast realm? Surely I won't have to search like looking for a needle in the ocean? Thus he guessed that the jade, faced Fox, must be a renownedly famous figure in the netherworld realm, easy to locate. He simply needed to find a local and ask. Just then, as if struck by a feeling, he turned his gaze eastward, eyes narrowing. In the far distance, a beautiful woman in a green dress was fleeing in a disheveled panic, her expression frantic. Behind her, a group of human powerhouses clad in black robes with obviously disguised faces gave chase relentlessly. At this sight, Fang Chen's brows furrowed slightly. Without knowing the full story or the rights and wrongs of either side, he had not intended to intervene. Moreover, he had just arrived in the netherworld realm, and to run into such a scene over this desolate blood sea wasn't it too coincidental? Yet as he hesitated, he inadvertently noticed that the green-dressed woman clutched a blood-stained swaddling cloth tightly to her bosom, and within it wrapped a newborn infant. After a brief internal debate, Fang Chen finally darted forward to meet them. By now, the green-dressed woman's face was ashen, the aura of the 5 decays of heaven and man around her coalescing and dispersing erratically. A woman at childbirth was at her most vulnerable. With such pursuit on top of that, she found it nearly impossible to hold on. Before long, she was tightly encircled by the 9 black-robed figures. Among these 9, the highest cultivation was at the 5th decay of heaven and man, the lowest at the 1st decay, each bearing unique magical tools. Knowing escape was hopeless, after a few desperate struggles, the woman finally knelt in despair, pleading mournfully, "I'll go with you." But she looked down at the infant in her arms with wrenching reluctance and sobbed, "But I beg you, spare my child, please." The black-robed cultivator at the 5th decay sneered coldly, "Fine. First cripple your own cultivation, and we guarantee we'll let him live." A violent inner struggle flickered in the woman's eyes. Once her cultivation was crippled, whether they spared her child would rest entirely on a whim of theirs. But if she refused, she would still be unable to protect her child. Her only recourse now was to entrust everything to whatever conscience they might possess. With that thought, she clenched her silver teeth and said resolutely, "Fine, I agree." She cast one last, infinitely tender glance at her child, then raised her hand decisively and struck fiercely at the divine ring behind her head. A crisp crack rang out as the divine ring shattered. The 5 decays aura around her rapidly dissipated. Her cultivation plummeted instantly to the nascent soul realm, leaving her utterly at their mercy. A sharp glint flashed in the black-robed man's eyes. Without the slightest courtesy, he swung his blade and slashed viciously at the woman, intending to kill her along with the infant in her arms. Instinctively, the woman twisted around, shielding the child with her body, using her thin back to forcibly block the blow. In an instant, her back was split open, revealing glistening, blood-soaked vertebra. A muffled cry of agony escaped her as she turned her head, shouting with righteous fury, "You truly have no honor." The black-robed man let out a sinister, savage laugh. "Only a fool like you would believe us. Die together with your bastard child." Before his words fully faded, his long blade stabbed fiercely toward her back, seeking to impale mother and child together. But at this split-second life-or-death juncture, a single claw, blood, red in hue, suddenly descended from above and firmly hooked the death-dealing blade. The black-robed man was greatly startled and snapped his head upward to the sky. There, suspended in the air, stood a handsome youth with a face like polished jade, clad in black robes, gazing down at them with calm composure. The man's pupils contracted as he demanded in a deep voice, "Stranger, do you intend to meddle in our affairs?" Fang Chen spoke indifferently. "I am merely a passerby and had no intention of interfering. However, your actions do not seem like those of good people, so I wish to ask the reason." He paused slightly, then continued coldly, "If that woman is a great evil, or shares a Betrothed feud with you, I will leave her to your devices, but if she is innocent, then disappear immediately." The black-robed man sneered disdainfully. "You think yourself worthy." As his words fell, the 8 other black-robed men beside him instantly assumed attack stances. Without expression, Fang Chen casually pulled a tendon rope. The sharp blood, Red Claw exerted sudden force, actually tearing the opponent's high, raid treasured blade into several pieces. Such terrifying power frightened the black-robed man into hastily dodging away. After exchanging glances with his companions, their hearts filled with fear, and they wisely turned to flee. Not to mention how formidable the claw was, but simply being able to destroy his long blade so effortlessly was enough to prove that this person's strength was absolutely unfathomable. Seeing them flee, Fang Chen did not pursue them. Saving the person was enough. There was no need to create unnecessary slaughter, and so unnecessary karma. He glanced at the green-dressed young woman, then turned to leave via instantaneous movement. At that moment, the woman's urgent cry came from behind, "Benefactor, please wait." The green-dressed woman, with tears and sobs, knelt in midair and kowtowed repeatedly, saying, "Many thanks to Benefactor for saving our lives. My son and I are eternally grateful." Without turning his head, Fang Chen said flatly, "No need for thanks. It was just a matter of convenience." The woman's eyes were full of gratitude. After a brief thought, she took out a blood-red jade from her bosom. Its shape was that of a beautiful, unnamed flower. She quickly raised the flower above her head, saying, "Benefactor, this is why they pursued me. My husband obtained the Blood River Ghost Flower, and they joined forces to ambush us, to protect me and our child, my husband. Stayed behind and died in battle."
What?
Fang Chen, who had intended to leave, abruptly turned back upon hearing this, looking at the Blood River Ghost Flower in her hand with a face full of astonishment. He had just entered the Netherworld realm and unexpectedly encountered the Blood River Ghost Flower like this. The green-dressed woman tearfully pleaded, "Benefactor, I am powerless to protect this item. I will give it to you now. Firstly, to repay you for saving our lives, and secondly, to ask that you escort us, mother and child, to the Undying Mountain." Fang Chen hesitantly stepped forward 2 paces, his gaze falling on the flower that still emitted a sanguine aura, and asked solemnly, "This was exchanged for your husband's life. Are you truly willing to give it to me?" The woman wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with the back of her hand, nodded repeatedly, and said in a trembling voice, "This humble one is entirely willing. Please accept it, Benefactor." Holding her child tightly with one arm, she directly extended the Blood River Ghost Flower with the other. Fang Chen hesitated briefly, but eventually nodded. "Very well. I will safely escort you to the Undying Mountain." As his words ended, he reached out to take the Blood River Ghost Flower and carefully placed it into a wooden box he had prepared. Seeing this, the green-dressed woman's tear-streaked face finally bloomed with a smile through tears. Just then, the infant in her arms suddenly burst out crying. She looked down at the child, a hint of embarrassment on her face, then turned around and said softly, "Benefactor, please wait a moment. The child is hungry." As she spoke, she loosened her clothes to nurse. Fang Chen said nothing and silently turned away to avoid any impropriety. The moment he turned, the area behind him suddenly fell deathly silent. Immediately after, a thick, suffocating bloody aura blew in from behind without warning, instantly enveloping him completely. This bloody aura was precisely the obscure power unique to the Netherworld realm, but its current concentration was 100 times denser than the wisps in the air. In just an instant, this force could cause a powerhouse at the divine transformation stage to completely lose control over their power, reducing them to lambs awaiting slaughter. Even a sage-level mighty expert caught off guard would suffer a severe setback. Fang Chen's vision went dark, his body instantly lost balance, and he plummeted straight down toward the blood sea below. A graceful green figure flickered over like teleportation and caught him steadily in her arms. The one who acted was none other than the green-dressed woman. Where was the infant in her arms now? The infant had long since vanished, and her fallen cultivation level had returned to the 5 declines of Heavenly Man's stage. Her charming face wore a teasing half-smile as she mocked, "Boy, with just this little bit of skill, you dare covet my Blood River ghost flower. This old lady hasn't even used her real trump card yet." As she spoke, she took out a sealing jade talisman containing soul power, poised to press it against Fang Chen's forehead. But just as the talisman was about to land, she suddenly hesitated. After thinking, she ultimately put the talisman away and instead took out a red rope, muttering to herself, "Forget it. He is different from the others. Others want to loot a burning house, seize my Blood River ghost flower, and some even covet this old lady's beauty. But he alone genuinely wanted to save people. Spare his life, capture him, and lock him up first. Once matters settle, then release him to scram." Having made up her mind, she grasped the red rope and was about to tie Fang Chen up. But before she could start, Fang Chen abruptly opened his eyes, staring at her with an icy gaze. This sudden change startled her into a shriek. Ah, a corpse rising. She hurriedly dropped Fang Chen, her charming figure transforming into a streak of light, intending to flee far away. In the next second, a shadow followed her like a shadow. Fang Chen's hand rested neither too heavily nor lightly on her fragrant shoulder as he snorted coldly. Using people's kindness to commit evil is 100 times more detestable than pure malice. The green-dressed woman then suddenly realized and inwardly cursed herself. Why am I running? I am at the 5 declines of heavenly man. This kid is only at the 4 declines of heavenly man. Realizing this, she immediately turned her head ferociously, gathered her strength, and slapped Fang Chen's arm, rebuking, "Take your dog paws off." Unexpectedly, her slap landed as if striking an indestructible realm artifact. Her small palm immediately swelled red and swollen at a speed visible to the eye. She was in so much pain that her small mouth widened into a full circle, yet no sound came out. Isn't this person only at the 4 declines of heavenly man? How can his body be so hard? After recovering slightly from the searing pain, she gritted her silver teeth and said, utterly humiliated and furious, "Bastard, taste this old lady's trump card." Before her words faded, she opened her mouth and began to silently chant an incantation. The wooden box in Fang Chen's embrace suddenly burst apart, revealing the true form of the Blood River ghost flower inside. The flower actually transformed into a huge bloody maw, taking a vicious bite at Fang Chen's chest. This thing was clearly no true heavenly treasure, but an evil object that could bite and feed on human blood. Feeling the sharp teeth of the evil thing, Fang Chen naturally would not let it run rampant. Whether it could bite through or not was another matter, but of all places, it had to bite his chest. HMPH Fang Chen snorted coldly and threw a punch, with blazing holy fire surging fiercely from his palm. A sizzling, burning sound followed, and the evil thing was instantly burned through by the holy fire, turning into flying ash. The green-dressed woman's eyes widened in disbelief as she exclaimed, "You are actually from the Angel Clan." The Angel Clan was one of the few existences that could innately restrain the powers of their netherworld realm. At this, the green-dressed woman was completely flustered, but she still had one last hidden trump card she hadn't used. An eerie green light suddenly flashed in her pupils, and a mysterious eye art capable of mesmerizing hearts was abruptly activated at such close range. Fang Chen's reaction was swift. A mass of black shadow appeared in front of him out of thin air. It was none other than a black cat exuding a mysterious aura, the mysterious artifact he had subdued together with Linglong in the Southern Heaven Realm's sacred hall. One of this cat's abilities was to reflect attacks. Whether on the soul level or the material level, it could return them. The green-dressed woman shot that eye art with full confidence, the beam precisely hitting the black cat. In the next instant, that eerie green light snapped back at even greater speed. Her eyes widened in terror as she exclaimed, "What the hell?" Before she could finish, her own eye art struck her solidly. She closed her eyes and fainted on the spot. Fang Chen's eyes swirled with cold light as he raised his palm, ready to end this malicious woman on the spot. But after a second thought, he stayed his hand. He had come to the netherworld to seek a precious treasure. If she could lie in ambush here, she might be a disciple or descendant of some sage. Killing her rashly would only add tremendous obstacles for himself. Better to meet the jade, face Fox first, and hand her over for judgment. Fang Chen took out a dog leash from his robes, deftly fastened it around the unconscious woman, and then kicked her into the space mirror. After that, he immediately activated the heart of myriad Earths, and began listening to the heartbeat pulse of the entire netherworld. Soon, at the very center of the world, he heard an immense, dense, and powerful heartbeat. Without hesitation, Fang Chen immediately rushed over using the power of the heart of myriad earths. Not long after he left, the 9 black-robed figures came running back from all directions, panting heavily. They stared at the empty sea and said, bewildered, "Where is our venerable one? Her aura has completely vanished too. Could she have run into a hard nut and gotten herself in over her head?" Meanwhile, after departing, Fang Chen traveled swiftly and finally arrived at the legendary Undying Mountain. At this moment, he sat by the window of a tavern, silently drinking wine from a cup in his hand. The streets below were surging with crowds, a cacophony of sounds converging upon his ears. The clamor of surrounding drinkers rose and fell in an unending din. He swiftly picked out the useful and important information among it. This place was the Undying Mountain, the absolute center of the Netherworld. According to legend, during the era of the Great Kayan Divine Kingdom, the Undying Mountain was once a towering tree that pierced the clouds. Later, when the Divine Kingdom fell, the entire Netherworld was submerged by a boundless sea of blood. Only this great tree remained, standing proudly alone amidst the Blood Sea. Its trunk extended from the Blood Sea, along with countless branches, ultimately forming islands large and small, scattered like stars. And the Undying Mountain was precisely the largest island formed by the main trunk. However, perhaps because the cultivators here generally had low cultivation bases, after listening carefully for a long while, Fang Chen did not hear any rumors about the jade-faced fox. He pondered inwardly whether to directly find a local cultivator and ask face to face. Just as he was mulling over this, out of the blue, he sensed an extremely familiar aura amid the surging crowd below. A layer of pale golden light instantly suffused his pupils as he abruptly activated the Sage's vision ability. Under his focused scrutiny, he indeed spotted a black-dressed woman wandering aimlessly through the crowd. The woman had an enchanting appearance and rather revealing attire. Walking on the street, she was like a black hole that drew all eyes, causing countless passers-by to turn their heads and stare. Demoness Fang Chen set down his cup, his face displaying extreme astonishment. Even before entering the Ice Realm, he had seen the demoness from afar, walking past with a group of people. But he had never imagined that her ultimate destination would also be this netherworld. On the street, the demoness strolled about, bored, looking around here and there out of idle curiosity. She suddenly stopped at a stall, and, looking at a black stone emanating dense demonic energy, her eyes lit up with delight. She marveled, "I didn't expect to find a stone containing demonic energy in the netherworld." The stall owner's eyes lit up. He greeted her attentively. "Miss has a keen eye. This is a treasure accidentally obtained from the void. Do you want it? I'll sell it to you at a low price." The demoness instinctively was about to nod, but after touching her waist, she could only shake her head helplessly. "Forget it, I have no money." All her spatial storage devices had long been confiscated by the Asura Holy Sun. Now she was completely destitute. But then, who was she? No money, couldn't she just steal? A crisp clatter rang out as a spatial storage device was suddenly tossed onto the stall. Immediately following, an indifferent voice sounded, "This is a low-grade crystal mine. I'll buy that stone for this young lady." The stall owner was overjoyed and said excitedly, all right, the stone is yours, deal." He hastily shoved the black stone into the demoness's hands and said hurriedly, "I'm closing shop, closing right now." Obviously afraid that his wealth was now exposed and might attract trouble, he wanted to flee as fast as possible. The demoness hugged the heavy stone, looking back in disbelief at the young man behind her, who was smiling. Fang Chen chuckled lightly. "What a small world, running into you wherever I go." The demoness came back to herself at that moment, her eyes involuntarily revealing deep surprise and joy at seeing an old acquaintance. But she quickly suppressed that joy and instead put on a coquettish, charming smile, saying, "You're my male favorite, how could we not be fated?" Her eyes wandered. She glanced sidelong at Fang Chen, her voice carrying a teasing tone. "What, did you travel 1,000 miles just to serve me in bed?" As she spoke, she cast him a bewitching glance that made one's heart flutter. Seeing this, Fang Chen merely smiled softly. In the past, he would have detested her wanton and unrestrained manner. But now, meeting an old acquaintance again in a foreign realm far from home, he found her rather more agreeable to the eye. He changed the subject and asked, "How did you end up in the netherworld? Where are those who were traveling with you?" Hearing this, the demoness's coquettish demeanor abruptly vanished, her expression suddenly becoming extremely grave. She looked around vigilantly, then grabbed Fang Chen's hand and, without allowing any argument, dragged him into a secluded alley nearby. She raised a hand and set up a tight barrier before speaking urgently in a low voice. Leave the netherworld immediately. A calamity of immense proportions is about to happen here. Fang Chen raised an eyebrow slightly, looking skeptical as he sized her up, and asked, "How do you know this?" He found it even stranger. What exactly was the demoness's purpose in coming to the netherworld? After all, this woman had rarely done anything good. The alluring demoness's coquettishness suddenly faded. After hesitating for a moment, her expression darkened, and she said quietly, "I've been captured by the Asura Holy Sun again."
What?
A chill ran down Fang Chen's spine. Asura Holy Sun. The moment that name, which had long disappeared, resurfaced in his mind, it still made him feel a strong sense of unease. Not because of how formidable his cultivation was, but because this man's ambition was simply too great, and his scheming was almost terrifyingly meticulous. Back then, in order to use the scripture of suppressing hell and calming souls to liberate the dead and gain merit, he had spent centuries single-handedly instigating a great war between the Middle Earth and the Hell Realm, nearly causing the destruction of Middle Earth. Against a person who, for his selfish desires, would not hesitate to sacrifice the lives of an entire world, Fang Chen simply had no reason not to be extremely on guard. His gaze hardened as he asked in a deep voice, "Is he also in the netherworld?" Fang Chen immediately believed that the major event the demoness spoke of was certainly real, because anything planned by the Asura Holy Sun was absolutely no small matter. The demoness replied gravely, "Yes, but don't ask for the exact location, because I don't know either." After he led us into the netherworld, he only assigned each of us our tasks, and then left on his own. As for what he ultimately intends to do, no one knows. Fang Chen's expression instantly became extremely solemn. He said, "What was your task?" The demoness took a deep breath and said, "To scatter a bag of mysterious seeds all over the Undying Mountain." Saying this, she immediately untied a pouch from her waist and held it up for Fang Chen to see. Fang Chen focused his gaze and saw that it indeed contained numerous dark red seeds, each one brimming with an astonishingly powerful life force. He carefully took out one of them, placed it in his palm to examine closely, then mobilized his soul power to probe its interior, only to find that it was merely an utterly ordinary seed with nothing special within. The witch frowned deeply, chiming in, "These seeds," he said, "were obtained from the 10 great forbidden grounds of the myriad heavens. But I secretly scrutinized them, and couldn't detect the slightest trace of anything amiss." Fang Chen, his heart brimming with doubt, stared at the seed in his palm and murmured under his breath, "The Asura Holy Sun never does anything without purpose if he's scheming so momentous, then this seed is surely far from ordinary. Could it be that my method of probing is wrong?" With this question in mind, his thoughts stirred, and he directly activated the 4th domain, probing the seed's interior to see if it held a hidden universe within. Yet no sooner had the divine light of his domain swept over it than the seed stirred without any warning. It abruptly split open, and in the next instant, a crimson, red worm, carrying a wisp of spatial force so faint as to be almost imperceptible, burst forth from within. The worm resembled a centipede closely, yet was far more ferocious and ghastly. The moment it emerged, it viciously bit down on Fang Chen's finger. A sharp, clear pang of pain shot through him. Despite his sage physique, the finger had been bitten, leaving a faint bite mark by this centipede. Fang Chen was instantly stunned. A mere newly hatched worm could actually wound the sage's physique. Had it been a divinity transformation cultivator, the finger would likely have been pierced instantly, and the worm would have burrowed into their body by now. However, just as this little bloodworm prepared for a second bite, its strength gradually dissipated, and after writhing agonizingly for a few moments, it died on the spot. It seemed that because it had left the seed prematurely, it had not received sufficient gestation. The witch's expression turned extremely grave. There were actually worms inside the seeds, and such utterly savage ones at that. Fang Chen nodded, his voice deep. "There is an independent space within the seeds, and all these worms lie dormant inside." At this moment, he grew even more perplexed by the Asura Holy Sun's motives. Ordering people to bury such vicious little worms everywhere. What on earth was he trying to accomplish? "Witch, you?" Fang Chen was about to say more, but at that very moment, the witch suddenly clutched her chest, her face instantly contorting with extreme agony. Moments later, uncontrollable panic flooded her eyes, and she spoke in a trembling voice. "The Asura Holy Sun has sensed that one of the seeds has been destroyed. He warned me." Fang Chen's expression shifted slightly, and he said urgently, "I nearly forgot. Let me first remove the bloodworm from your body." However, the witch immediately waved her hand and stopped him. "Don't." The Asura Holy Son, who knows what he experienced in the Forbidden Ground, has learned a completely new method of control. Even if only the bloodworm is removed, he can still kill me from a distance. Hearing this, Fang Chen's brow furrowed tightly. Not knowing the specific method of the binding restriction, he truly dared not break it rashly. If the Asura Holy Son detected it and cursed the witch to death from afar, that would be counterproductive. After pondering a moment, he lifted his head and said solemnly, "Return to the Asura Holy Son's side for now, and bide your time. If I ever get the chance to capture him, I will surely find for you the means to freedom." Hearing this, the witch suddenly froze, her beautiful eyes staring unblinkingly at Fang Chen. The face that usually brimmed with frivolity was now utterly calm. All that remained was a deep tenderness hidden in the depths of her eyes. So even someone like her could be cared about by another. But she quickly concealed her expression and let out a deliberate coy huff, saying, "I don't need you to take care of me. I was never a good person to begin with. Whatever fate befalls me in the future, it will be of my own doing. And you'd better stop associating with me. Ruining the reputation of the great hero of the Central Plains is something I can't afford." But Fang Chen gave a faint smile, his gaze sincere as he looked at her, and said, "But you're not a bad person either." In truth, aside from being licentious and fond of keeping a collection of male favorites, the witch had never committed any great evil. Even as a demonic cultivator, there had never been any rumor of her slaughtering the innocent. The reason her reputation was particularly foul was merely because, as a woman, she behaved in such a dissolute manner. The witch was utterly taken aback, her heart trembling sharply. So, in Fang Chen's eyes, she wasn't that filthy and contemptible after all. Meeting Fang Chen's bright, sincere gaze, she suddenly found it somewhat dazzling and hastily averted her eyes, asking instead then, "What are you doing in the Netherworld realm?" Fang Chen briefly explained his purpose. After hearing this, the witch's expression grew dazed, and she murmured, You're already about to challenge the 5 declines of heaven and man. When I first met you, you were just a mere nascent soul." She silently lamented for a long while before composing herself. Taking out a jade slip and pressing it to her forehead, she then handed it to Fang Chen, saying, "This is all my memories since arriving in the Netherworld realm. The information about the jade-faced fox you mentioned is also inside. Once you obtain the Blood River Ghost Flower, leave as soon as possible. Whatever you do, don't linger here." Fang Chen's eyes lit up immediately. He accepted the jade slip with both hands and said, "Thank you." The witch subconsciously revealed a charming smile, blurting out, "HMPH, is that all the thanks I get?" But halfway through her words, she suddenly stopped, and even that frivolous demeanor was swiftly reined in. She snatched the seed pouch from Fang Chen's hand, her tone hurried, urging, "I should go. Otherwise, the Asura Holy Son will become suspicious." "You take care." Fang Chen looked at her and nodded firmly. "You too. Try your best to survive. I will definitely find a way to save you." The witch's bright eyes flickered. She nodded, then dissolved the barrier and departed without looking back. Fang Chen promptly pressed the jade slip to his forehead. After confirming the information about the jade-faced fox, he too vanished in a flash. Not long after he left, the witch deactivated her invisibility from a dim alley not far away, standing silently there, gazing toward the direction Fang Chen had departed. After a long while, she slowly lowered her head and let out a long sigh. "Why didn't I meet you earlier?" That lonely voice drifted slowly on the wind, and her silhouette gradually receded into the distance, vanishing at last into the vast sea of people. Netherworld Realm, Mount Immortal, Green Hill. This was the highest point in the Netherworld Realm, the very top of that colossal tree. Atop a protuberant knoll, the grass was like a lush carpet. Countless great dowlaws wove together into an azure canopy, hanging silently overhead. Several immaculate, snow-white foxes were lounging lazily on the hill, basking in the balmy mountain breeze. In this blood-red Netherworld realm, the scenery here seemed exceptionally serene and transcendent. This was because the master of this place was the mightiest existence in the entire Netherworld, a demon fox that had already reached the 3 Calamities realm. And the jade-faced fox was her youngest daughter. Fang Chen stood before the array formation of Green Hill, cupped his hands in salute, and declared loudly, "Fang Chen of the Central Plains pays his respects to the jade-faced fairy." No sooner had his voice faded than the snow-white foxes all turned their heads to look at him. Among them, a white fox with a slender, graceful figure slowly rose, and with supremely elegant strides, sauntered toward him. Behind it swayed 9 fluffy white foxtails, its appearance actually bearing some resemblance to Yunshang. As the white fox drew nearer, its form gradually shifted amidst the interplay of light and shadow, transforming from a fox into a breathtakingly beautiful woman with a sinuous figure and snowy white robes. That peerlessly beautiful countenance held an absolute allure for any man in the world, and the noble, graceful aura she exuded made her even more irresistible. Of course, Fang Chen was the exception. After all, he already kept a fox at home that was both beautiful and capable. The aloof and noble white fox belle arrived gracefully before the array, her pair of jade, green eyes quietly appraising him. After a moment, she parted her crimson lips and spoke with a voice as cool and crisp as wind chimes. "You are the champion marquis of the Central Plains." Fang Chen replied neither humbly nor arrogantly, "That is I." "Greetings, jade-faced fairy." But the white fox belle gently smoothed the hair over her chest and said without the slightest ripple of emotion, "You are too late. My younger sister has already been seized by someone." Fang Chen's heart jolted in sudden alarm. Who had the audacity, the guts of a bear and a leopard to dare abduct the most beloved youngest daughter of a three calamities realm demon fox? Could it have been that Asura, holy son, fellow? That Asura, holy son, is capable of anything except behaving like a decent human. Now he's even resorted to kidnapping women. He truly is a despicable scoundrel, through and through. Fang Chen immediately spoke with righteous indignation, lowering his voice to ask, "May I ask, fairy, was this misdeed perpetrated by a member of the Asura race?" The white fox beauty, however, remained calm and indifferent, gently shaking her head. "No, it was a human. That person, like you, came from beyond the heavens, and is also at the four declines of the heavenly being realm." Fang Chen was instantly stunned. Could there really be such a coincidence in this world? But when had he ever captured a jade-faced fox? Although he had indeed captured a green-skirted young woman, that woman was at the five declines of the heavenly being, so how could she be a friend of this drunken grand libationer? "The champion marquis has seen our jade-faced princess." The white foxes inside the grand array all stepped forward, one after another. Before they even drew near, they successively transformed into human forms as they walked. These transformed beings, both male and female without exception, emanated an aura that had already reached the realm of demon lords. Among them, a woman whose cultivation had even reached the two calamities realm stepped forward gracefully, her gaze sharp and intimidating as she coldly interrogated him. Before Fang Chen could respond, the peerlessly beautiful white fox beauty spoke up, her voice like a chilly spring, icy and clear. There is no need to suspect him. Her gaze shifted slightly, sweeping over Fang Chen as she continued, "If he truly captured Jade face and then came to kink you, wouldn't that be walking right into a trap? Moreover, he is merely at the god transformation realm. He wouldn't be able to lay a hand on Jade face anyway." Hearing this, Fang Chen's heart finally relaxed a little. He thought to himself, this elder sister is quite reasonable after all. How could he possibly be the villain who captured Jade face? Steadying himself, Fang Chen took a step forward, cupped his hands toward the demon lords, and declared loudly, "Everyone of Kinkyu, I originally came here this time under the orders of the Grand Libationer of the Great Wilderness Prefecture of the Central Plains. I intended to ask Fairy Jade Face for help in plucking a single Blood River ghost flower. Since Fairy Jade Face is now in trouble, and I happen to have some rudimentary skill in tracking people, I, Fang, am willing to offer my modest efforts to help search for her whereabouts. Emotionally, it's for the friendship between the Grand Libationer and Jade-Faced Fox. Rationally, it's because I need to rely on Jade-Faced Fox to obtain the Blood River Ghost Flower. Therefore, helping out at this time is his bounden duty." Unexpectedly, as soon as his words fell, that white fox beauty, whose gaze was already as icy as frost, suddenly showed streaks of bone, chilling coldness on her peerless face the moment she heard the words Grand Libationer. She stared at Fang Chen and said, word by word, the Grand Libationer. They still have the face to contact our netherworld. At these words, the other Fox Clan demon lords also instantly showed hostility, and they all shouted angrily. They even dare to want our Blood River Ghost Flower. Absolutely impossible. The Blood River Ghost Flower will never be given to anyone. I ask you to leave the netherworld immediately. This sudden turn of events left Fang Chen completely stunned. Wait, what is all this about? That drunken Grand Libationer of the Primordial Chaos Prefecture had sworn to him that she had already arranged an opportunity for the 5 declines of the heavenly being for him. And now he gets a slap in the face as soon as he arrives. It seems that the netherworld and the Grand Libationer not only know each other, but also harbor quite a bit of enmity. Had he known this, he would have been better off not taking out that letter at all. At this moment, Fang Chen truly wished he could slap himself a couple of times. He was even starting to wonder how much fake liquor he had drunk back then to have believed that woman, who was always dead drunk, so easily. Now, let alone the Blood River ghost flower, whether he could even remain in the netherworld was becoming a problem.
However,
just when the Fox Clan demon lords were seething with rage and on the verge of losing control, a voice that was elegant and noble, devoid of any worldly aura, suddenly drifted out from the depths of Kinkyu.
Do not be rude.
The voice was light, yet it carried an innate authority. The White Fox demon lords, who had been seething with anger just moments before, trembled all over upon hearing it. They hurriedly turned around, facing the direction of Kinkyu and bowing deeply with the utmost respect.
Mother?
We pay our respects to the great sage. Fang Chen's heart stirred, and he quickly raised his eyes to look. He saw that on the high grasslands of Kinkyu, a middle-aged woman in a long green dress had appeared at some unknown time. She stood with her back to everyone, alone amidst that vast expanse of green, silently gazing into the distance, her sleeves gently fluttering in the wind. Fang Chen dared not act presumptuously. He immediately cupped his hands solemnly and declared, "Fang Chen of the Central Plains pays his respects to the great sage of the netherworld." Hearing this, the green-robed woman slowly turned around. Her face was like a jade plate, her features even more exquisitely carved. Every part exuded a beauty that was peerless, a fading beauty that had stunned the passage of time. She stepped lightly, her figure gracefully passing through the array, and came right before Fang Chen. In those eyes that had experienced the vicissitudes of life, yet remained as clear as ever, there now flickered a soft look of reminiscence. She scrutinized Fang Chen closely and asked, "That Grand Libationer of your Primordial Chaos Prefecture, is she doing well now?" The Grand Libationer of Primordial Chaos Prefecture. Fang Chen felt his brain spin rapidly for a moment before he finally connected the dots. The grave, weeping Grand Libationer. That is the scumbag Grand Libationer who falls in love with every person she meets. Her lover's grave's enough to cover an entire mountain. But why would this highly respected green-robed lady suddenly ask about her? Fang Chen nodded and answered truthfully, reporting to Senior, "She is doing quite well." Hearing this reply, a faint light flickered in the green-robed woman's bright eyes, and she then asked, "Has she ever mentioned a name called Myozion?" Sensing the unconcealable nervousness and fervor in her eyes, even if Fang Chen were muddle-headed, he finally understood everything at this point. There was history between this Fox Clan, great sage of the netherworld, and that grave, weeping Grand Libationer. And most likely, she had been deeply wounded in love. It was precisely for this reason that when he mentioned the Central Plains Grand Libationer earlier, those White Fox demon lords reacted with such fury. "That damn scumbag, after going out and having your fun, you left me with such huge trouble." Fang Chen rolled his eyes, immediately made a decision, and said firmly, "No, she has never mentioned it at all." He shook his head like a rattle, drum, and added, "She has too many women. All day long, she can't even finish weeping at graves, so when would she ever mention a name?" The light in the green-robed woman's eyes instantly faded away like a dying candle flame. She murmured in a daze, "I guessed as much. I already guessed as much. She cultivates the Tao of love and has loved countless people in her life. How could she possibly remember me?" Saying this, she shook her head dejectedly and was about to turn and leave. Fang Chen behind her suddenly spoke, stopping her. "Senior, since you can't let go, why not simply go to the Central Plains and find her?" The green-robed woman paused her steps, her back to Fang Chen, as a hazy mist of tears instantly welled up in her eyes. She said sorrowfully, "It's not allowed." She forbade me from going to the Central Plains, and she swore she would never tread into the netherworld. Upon hearing this, Fang Chen was utterly speechless. Such a supreme great sage, whose cultivation had reached the Three Calamities realm, and that damn scumbag just wasted her like this. If during that battle in the Southern Heaven realm, this senior had come to help, how could he have gone through so many twists and turns? Fang Chen cursed inwardly at his own lack of ambition, then steeled his heart and resolutely spoke, "Senior, your beauty is unparalleled and your love runs deep. For that fellow to meet you, it was as if smoke rose from her ancestral graves. A blessing from 18 generations of ancestors begging and pleading in the underworld, a heaven C&T marriage. And she didn't cherish it at all. That is utterly detestable." The green-robed woman, who had already planned to leave, felt that every word of Fang Chen's speech struck a chord deep in her heart. She couldn't help but slowly turn her head back, still with a hint of grievance. Then what can be done? She and I, in the end, have no future to speak of. Fang Chen never expected that the dignified great sage of the netherworld was actually such a hopeless romantic, a love-struck fool at heart. Such a powerful outside helper, he absolutely could not give up on her just like that. He immediately thumped his chest loudly and declared, "Senior, rest assured. She won't let you go to the Central Plains, but I, Fang Chen, will allow you to come." The green-robed woman was slightly taken aback and looked at him with puzzlement. Her gaze clearly said, "You, a mere god transformation cultivator, can you really make decisions for the entire Central Plains?" It must be understood that as an external sage, without the permission of the Central Sacred Land, the moment she steps into the Central Plains, the Heavenly Tao's laws would directly eject her. Fang Chen didn't waste words. With a thought, a brilliantly shining 9-colored dragon pearl materialized in his palm. The woman in blue was first stunned, then her pupils contracted sharply. She recognized it at a glance and cried out involuntarily, "A dragon pearl from the Central Plains." Looking closer, she was even more astonished. "No, this aura, it's a brand new dragon pearl. How did this thing end up in your hands?" Not only the great sage, but the White Fox Beauty and the Fox Clan Demon Venerates were all shocked by this sight. Strictly speaking, this is a realm artifact of the Central Plains, the supreme token that only the ancient sages of the Central Plains are qualified to hold. How could it appear in the possession of a mere divine transformation stage cultivator? Fang Chen lifted the dragon pearl and proclaimed proudly, "This is the 10th dragon pearl, personally bestowed by the ancient sage, Divine Steel. As of now, I am the 10th sage of the Central Plains. As long as I permit it, Senior, what does it matter if you come and go from the Central Plains 100 times? The woman in blue's crystalline eyes instantly brightened again, but upon second thought, the light quickly dimmed. She sighed softly and said, "What can entering the Central Plains do? She has steeled her heart not to see me, and I can't force her." Fang Chen put away the earth, Kai Dragon Pearl, let out a cold snort, and said, "In this life, what I detest most are scumbags. Her betraying you like this is truly something I cannot tolerate. When I return this time, I will immediately force her to forget all those messy women, and then marry you in a grand ceremony." The woman in blue was overjoyed at these words. She probably wouldn't even dare dream of such a scene. However, she quickly became suspicious and asked, "If she is unwilling, could you even order her?" Fang Chen smiled arrogantly and countered, "What's so difficult about that?" This marriage he was determined to make happen. Fang Chen said with unwavering determination, "My journey through the myriad heavens this time originally requires me to bring back at least 10 sage-fated encounters. This is a merit as vast as the heavens. At that time, I'll ask for no rewards at all. I will demand only that she marries you. At that point, if she dares refuse, the other 8 grand libationers will not allow it, and the sages of the Central Plains will even less allow it. They'll press her head down themselves and make her agree." Hearing this, the woman in blue was overjoyed beyond expectation, her voice trembling with excitement. You are truly willing to help me like this." Fang Chen laughed inwardly. Willing? How could he not be willing? Not only could he obtain 10 sage-fated encounters, but he could also conveniently lure a 3 calamities stage super expert back to the Central Plains. Only a fool would refuse such a deal. He immediately put on a stern face and said righteously, "I, Fang Chen, absolutely will not allow the reputation of the Central Plains to be ruined by a mere scumbag. I would rather have no reward at all than fail to bring you two together." The woman in blue was so pleasantly surprised she didn't know what to do. She quickly reached out and grasped Fang Chen's hand, her eyes shining brightly, and said happily, "Good child, thank you so much. Auntie is truly—" Before she could finish, Fang Chen showed displeasure and interrupted. "What auntie? Clearly its elder sister." The woman in blue was first stunned, then couldn't help but touch her still smooth and delicate cheek, letting out a mock, annoyed yet delighted huff. Smooth talker, obviously a boss habit learned from her. Though she scolded him with her mouth, the look she gave Fang Chen was clearly many times more favorable than before. Fang Chen struck while the iron was hot and smiled. "That damn scumbag's encounter with a peerless beauty like you, elder sister, is the greatest fortune of her life. Regardless of whether she acknowledges you or not, I, Fang Chen, recognize you as my elder sister today." With him calling her elder sister so sweetly and intimately, the woman in blue finally couldn't hold back and burst into laughter with a PFFT. She poked Fang Chen's forehead lightly with a slender finger and scolded playfully, "You little rascal, then sister will trust you this once. Tell me, what are you still lacking on the martial path? Sister will give it to you right now." At the side, the Fox Clan Demon Venerates were all dumbfounded. "Wait, that's it?" A few calls of elder sister, and their lofty great sage was completely won over. To the point that she's now offering treasures of her own accord. So, mastering the wealth code is really that simple. After a moment of shock, the eyes of these Fox Clan demon venerates gradually brightened, as if they had instantly comprehended some profound truth of the heavenly Tao. Only the white fox beauty, having witnessed all this, spat in contempt and cursed under her breath, utterly shameless. HMPH. The moment that low curse left her mouth, the smile on the woman in blue's face vanished as swiftly as melting ice. She looked over with dignity and uttered a low reprimand, impudence. The white fox beauty's delicate body trembled, and she ultimately dared not act out again. But she still stubbornly turned her face away, her pearly teeth lightly biting her red lips. That expression still showed extreme defiance. The woman in blue paid her no more mind, and when she turned back to Fang Chen, her gaze softened like a spring breeze, speaking gently. Brother Fan, don't hold it against Yuyan. Since you came to the netherworld realm for the Blood River Ghost Flower, sister will bestow it upon you. Upon hearing this, the white fox beauty's expression changed slightly, and she hastily cried out to stop her. Mother. That Blood River Ghost Flower is the only remaining nutrient for the netherworld realm's divine tree. If you give it away, our divine tree might completely collapse. As soon as the words left her mouth, she suddenly realized the trouble, abruptly stopped, and her clear, quiet eyes looked at Fang Chen with a hint of panic. Divine tree collapse? Fang Chen lowered his head to look at the divine tree beneath his feet, long withered over countless ages, and couldn't help but freeze on the spot. Could it be that the instability of the netherworld realm's world barrier is rooted in this divine tree being on the verge of toppling? It must be known that the entire netherworld realm is an ocean of blood. The only place where countless living beings can dwell and continue their civilization is on the massive branches exposed above the Blood Sea. Once the divine tree collapses, those experts at the Sage, divine transformation, and nascent soul stages might still rely on divine abilities to create palaces suspended in the escape, why eking out a miserable existence. But for the countless ordinary beings with low cultivation, this would absolutely be an insurmountable catastrophe. The woman in blue let out a faint, melancholy sigh, her voice full of helplessness and vicissitude. This divine tree has been steeped in the boundless blood sea for 10,000 wide years, its roots long since rotten beyond repair. A mere Blood River ghost flower cannot possibly extend its lifespan. Rather than let it be mercilessly consumed by the divine tree and go to waste, it's better to give it to someone who truly needs it. The white fox beauty fell silent. Behind her, the expressions of the Fox Clan demon venerates also became extraordinarily somber. Originally, this divine tree could have stood firm for several more centuries. But to withstand the recent invasion of the ancient giants, they had to forcibly drain far too much life force from the divine tree. Now, although the ancient giants were beaten back by their combined efforts, the divine tree's life has finally reached its end. That Blood River ghost flower, though containing immense life force, might barely extend the tree's life for a few days, but it would ultimately be a drop in the bucket. Even if it were truly absorbed by the divine tree, it would only delay this destruction by a few more days. The woman in blue gently patted Fang Chen's shoulder and said in a soft tone, "Come, I'll take you to retrieve that Blood River ghost flower." Fang Chen shook his head, a bitter smile surfacing on his face. Forget it. How could I, just to advance my own cultivation, prematurely doom the innocent beings of this entire realm? This Blood River ghost flower is now tied to the survival of countless living beings.
How could he harden his heart and take it away?
Hearing this, the woman in blue's gaze upon him grew even gentler. At this moment, she seemed to vaguely understand why Fang Chen could gain the recognition of numerous ancient sage divine steels and become that legendary 10th sage. Someone like him, who harbors a heart of compassion for all living beings, is truly rare and precious in this cold, cruel era. After a brief moment of thought, she still decided to lend Fang Chen a helping hand. Such a person deserves the full assistance of her entire netherworld realm. Do not take it to heart. This divine tree will wither completely in about 1 month. A couple of days more or less no longer hold any meaning for the greater situation. Accept this Blood River ghost flower without worry. If your heart truly cannot bear it, then when the time comes, simply save a few more lives. Upon hearing this, Fang Chen felt even more bitterness well up in his heart. Such a weighty opportunity was truly more than he could bear. At that very moment, the earth beneath their feet suddenly quaked violently. Right after that, a heaven-shattering, earth-rending crack resounded from the deepest depths of the Blood Sea. Looking out, the previously barely calm Blood Sea suddenly churned with colossal waves, transforming into boundless monstrous swells that swept ferociously in all directions. Turbid silt that had settled at the seabed for countless tens of thousands of years now roiled upward in a frenzy. Fang Chen hastily steadied himself and gasped in bewilderment. Could it be that something has happened to the divine tree? The face of the green-robed woman darkened instantly, and she roared sternly, "Someone is deliberately destroying the divine tree."
Swoosh.
Before her words faded, her entire form blurred into an afterimage and vanished on the spot. The White Fox Beauty and the Fox Clan Yao sovereigns all paled, and without hesitation they unleashed their teleportation arts, plunging straight for the seabed. Seeing this, Fang Chen promptly followed, his expression slightly grim. He vaguely suspected who the mastermind behind this was. In mere moments, he plunged headlong into the churning blood sea. Immediately, vast amounts of dark, baleful energy from the thick blood water flooded into his body, madly trying to invade and corrupt his strength. Fortunately, Fang Chen had been on guard against this, and he promptly activated the heavenly abyss heart art, completely blocking them outside his body. Soon he reached the dim seabed and stood beside the green-robed woman. Looking up, before him loomed the tree's roots, so colossal that they stretched beyond sight in any direction, as if an entire ancient continent lay submerged at the bottom of the sea. These roots, soaked for eons in the Blood Sea, had long since rotted into fragility, with not a trace of vitality left to be found. A single, sufficiently powerful force could shatter them with a gentle push. And now, a long, hideous gash had been torn across these immensely fragile roots, bringing this already crumbling divine tree at last to the very end of its life. That shocking fissure was spreading madly outward to both sides. Once it consumed the entire root system, this divine tree that bore a whole world would completely collapse and crumble into ruin. Fang Chen fixed his gaze on the ghastly claw mark, his eyes turning cold as blades, and bit out each word. This was done by the Asura clan. In a flash, he recalled how the Asura Holy Sun had personally torn open the interspatial realm of the myriad demons' great province, intending to unleash all the hellish beings within and create a cataclysm. And the sole reason he had done that was merely to draw the Yunhuang ancient saint away from the main continent. Now, to achieve his own unspeakable ends, that Asura Holy Sun had once again not hesitated to personally doom the innocent beings of an entire world. At this moment, the green-robed woman no longer had any mind to spare for who was destroying the roots. Gazing at the unstoppable crack, she murmured in a trance, "Like days, the netherworld realm is finished." Deep despair also spread across the faces of the White Fox Beauty and the Fox Clan Yao sovereigns. "We have no way to evacuate so many innocent souls in time." As the mightiest beings in the entire netherworld realm, before this ever-widening chasm of destruction, all they felt now was boundless, unfathomable despair. The spread of that fissure had long since passed the point where mortal power could halt it. In a few more hours at most, the terrifying crack would cover the entire root system. By then, the divine tree would sink. All living beings would be wiped out, and everything would turn to nothingness. A crushing weight seized Fang Chen's heart, so heavy he could barely breathe. Must he stand by and watch a world march toward its doom? Abruptly, he felt the life pouch hanging at his waist tremble violently. Fang Chen looked down quickly and saw that it was the pouch containing the breathing earth. The tiny frozen seed within its medicinal garden had seemingly sensed that a divine tree was about to die, and now it was thrashing restlessly inside. He had not meant to be distracted at this critical juncture, but then it was as if a thunderbolt flashed through his mind, jolting his entire body. Of course. Why was this divine tree collapsing? The root cause was that it had long since withered, and the breathing earth in his hands, once the world embryo itself, possessed precisely the ability to cause astonishing mutations in plant life. Fang Chen forcibly suppressed the urge to blurt out this idea immediately. After all, the tree before him came from the divine kingdom of Great Kayan. He had never attempted to nurture such a colossal divine entity, and there was no guarantee whether the breathing earth would even work. It was a gamble. He had to test it in secret first. Without further hesitation, Fang Chen produced a single grain of faintly glowing breathing earth and flew to the edge of the hideous crack. This fissure was as tall as a full-grown man. A tiny speck of breathing earth before that gaping wound looked pitifully small, completely insignificant. Thus, even in Fang Chen's own heart, there was not the slightest shred of confidence. He drew a deep breath and gently placed the grain of breathing earth deep within the crack. Only then did the green-robed woman seem to recover slightly, her eyes still a little vacant as she asked dazedly, "Brother Fan, what are you doing?" Fang Chen turned back and said gravely, "I want to see if there is still a chance to revive this divine tree." Upon hearing this, a deep, bitter smile touched the green-robed woman's face. Beside her, the Fox Clan Yao sovereigns also revealed expressions of profound bitterness. Over the past centuries, how had they not thought of ways to save this dying divine tree? But this tree originated from the mysterious divine kingdom of Great Kayan, and the vitality it contained was unimaginably vast. Reviving, it was far beyond what any mortal power could accomplish. Crack, crack. The terrifying sound of breaking, chilling to the bone, continued its mad spread into the distance. It was the sound of their hearts plummeting deeper into the abyss, sinking without end. Just then, high above the blood sea, the distant world barrier was violently torn open by supreme divine power. A young man in black robes appeared, arms folded across his chest, a thick sneer on his face as he looked down upon the churning blood sea from his lofty vantage point. Tusk, netherworld realm, it seems. You've run into quite a bit of trouble. How about it? Would you like this Viscount to lend a hand? His voice echoed across the sky, drawing everyone's heads upward. The moment the white fox beauty saw this person, her delicate brows furrowed tightly, and she said coldly, You still haven't left. Just a few days earlier, this young man who called himself Viscount of Southern Kayan had come to the Netherworld realm with the intention of recruiting them. He proposed that they take the world embryo and defect to Southern Kayan, but only those at Saint Realm and above. Sage Realm, Divinity Transformation, and Nascent Soul Cultivators, would be allowed to go. All the countless other living beings would be abandoned and left to their own fate. Their rejection had been immediate and firm, and they had strictly forbidden him from ever setting foot in the Netherworld realm again. Who would have thought that this man had never left, but had lingered outside the boundary, waiting for this very chance? The green-robed woman's gaze sharpened with regal authority, and she demanded in a deep voice, "Did you know all along that someone would destroy the divine tree? Or are you, perhaps, part of the scheme yourself? Otherwise, how could this Viscount of Southern Kayan have been waiting outside all this time, and appear at such a coincidental moment? He must have sensed long before that a great upheaval was imminent." Feng Lingxie outspread his hands, the sneer on his face deepening. "I've been outside this realm the entire time. How could I possibly be involved? I merely happened to discover a group of fellows sneaking into your Netherworld realm, that's all. I must say these people do have some skill to actually destroy your divine tree, a pillar that supports the heavens." The green-robed woman's expression became as dark as still water. This Fang Lingxie clearly knew everything, yet he chose to stand idly by, coldly watching the entire Netherworld step-by-step march toward destruction. She felt an irrepressible rage blazing within her chest. Fang Lingxie merely laughed nonchalantly. "Don't look at me like that. The life or death of your Netherworld has nothing to do with this lord. On the contrary, my visit this time can actually help you save a portion of your living beings." As he spoke, he flipped his palm over. A colossal pouch, 100 zhang tall, instantly appeared beside him out of thin air. It was precisely the life pouch used by those ancient giants. But compared to those used by the ancient giants, the one he produced was over 10,000 times larger in size. By a rough estimate, it could hold at least hundreds of millions of living beings. This number might not encompass all the denizens of the Netherworld, but transporting 1/10 of them would be more than enough. The green-robed woman's gaze sharpened slightly. Their initial contingency plan was to spare no effort to save roughly 1/10 of the Netherworld's living beings in this final month. The White Fox Beauty and the Fox Clan Demon Lords' faces instantly lit up with ecstasy. This was the last chance to save the Netherworld from annihilation. Yet they all understood there's no such thing as a free meal in this world, especially at their most desperate moment, when they needed help the most. What awaited them was surely a shameless act of profiting from disaster. The green-robed woman forcibly calmed her heart, asking with a placid expression, "Speak, what do you want?" A mocking smirk curved the corner of Feng Lingxiao's lips, his eyes glinting with amusement. "I actually preferred that unruly, defiant look you had before." An unprecedented humiliation surged into the green-robed woman's heart, but for the countless living beings of the Netherworld about to perish, she stifled her anger and said in a low voice, "Earlier, I was presumptuous." A trace of mockery still lingering on his lips, Feng Lingxie leisurely pressed, and then, You don't think a casual sentence will make me forgive you, do you? The green-robed woman drew a deep breath, slowly closing her eyes. She forcefully suppressed the surging humiliation in her heart, her body trembling slightly as she began to bow slowly toward Feng Lingxiao. But just at the moment she was about to bow, a steady, powerful hand suddenly pressed down on her shoulder. Fang Chen extended his hand to stop her, warning in a deep voice, "Don't fall for it. He's testing your bottom line." His gaze swept toward Feng Lingxiao, a chill in his tone. "The more you yield, the harsher the price he'll demand." Upon hearing this, an extremely bitter smile slowly surfaced on the green-robed woman's lips. The white fox beauty beside her was also filled with desolation, her exquisite face etched with bitter sorrow. Did they not see through this scheme? For Feng Lingxiao to humiliate them without cause, what tangible benefit could it bring him? It was nothing but earning their hatred for no reason. The reason he pressed step by step was to test to what extent the great sages of the netherworld would concede in order to save the common people. The stronger their will, the more he could exploit the disaster and demand an exorbitant price. But even seeing through all this, what could they do? Time was running out for them. They had no choice but to stake everything on a single throw. Now, whatever Feng Lingxiao demanded, they had no option but to give. Feng Lingxiao's expression suddenly froze. Only now did he notice there was another person standing beside the green-robed woman. He narrowed his eyes to scrutinize, and the moment he recognized the face, he immediately identified the newcomer. He coldly shouted, "Fang Chen of the Middle Land, so it's you." Before his voice faded, his thoughts raced, and in an instant he grasped the crux of the matter. Instead, a look of delight appeared on his face as he exclaimed, "I was wondering why those ancient giants in the Ice Realm retreated without reason. So it was you, brat, who went there carrying the truce monument." Next, he lifted his chin slightly and said in a tone bordering on charity, "Hand over the truce monument, and this lord will mercifully forgive your previous offenses." Fang Chen said nothing, merely gazing at him coldly, his eyes indifferent as if watching a clownish buffoon. In the next instant, the divine might within him erupted fiercely. A majestic banner, 10 jang tall, suddenly manifested behind him. On the fluttering flag, the 3 bold characters Champion Marquis danced wildly in the wind, radiating supreme authority. That ancient pressure originating from the great Kayan divine kingdom, like a tangible hurricane, swept forth with a boom. The white fox beauty and the fox clan demon lords near, by felt an irresistible shudder surge from the depths of their souls. Forced to bow, they cried out in unison, "We pay homage to the Champion Marquis." Even with the distant world barrier between them, Feng Lingxiao, directly facing the pressure, saw his expression drastically change. His eyes nearly splitting with rage, he roared, "You dare." He had nearly forgotten that the current Fang Chen was already the exalted Champion Marquis, a title beyond compare. The noble ranks of the great Kayan divine kingdom were strict from high to low, king, duke, marquis, earl, viscount, and he himself was merely a lowly viscount granted by the southern Kayan. But Fang Chen, he was a grand feudal marquis, personally appointed by the true great Kayan divine kingdom. A full 2 ranks above him. A single rank higher could crush a person, let alone 2 entire ranks. In the face of this rule's suppression from the divine kingdom, Feng Lingxiao had no room to resist. Though his face turned crimson, and he forced a trapped beast's low growl from his throat, desperately commanding himself not to bow, his body completely escaped his control. He stiffly bent his waist, panting heavily through his nose, his tightly clenched jaw forced open by an immense invisible power. In unwilling fury, he let out a heart-wrenching howl. "No, how can I bow to a low-born wretch?" Yet, as the Champion Marquis banner rolled in the wind, Feng Lingxiao, in extreme humiliation, could not suppress his voice as he cried out, "This subordinate, Feng Lingxiao, pays respects to the Champion Marquis." For anyone bearing a noble title, the more they are suppressed by divine might, even a self-deprecating term must be respectfully changed to subordinate. Fang Chen looked down at him indifferently, his tone as cold as a glacier of 10,000 years. "In the future, when you encounter me, either retreat 3 leagues or bow down as a subject." Feng Lingxiao felt an unprecedented shame rush to his head. This waist that he once could manipulate at will now sat high above him, trampling on his head. What shamed him even more was that from now on he could never straighten his back before Fang Chen, forever groveling as a subordinate. Only when Fang Chen put away the banner did that divine suppression finally dissipate. As if granted amnesty, Feng Lingxiao hurriedly straightened up, glaring fixedly at Fang Chen, his eyes nearly spewing fire. But he dared not voice his anger. afraid of provoking Fang Chen to brandish that champion marquee banner again and suppress him.
With nowhere to vent his pent-up fury, he abruptly turned and unleashed it all on the green-robed woman, saying venomously, "You want this pouch to save the netherworld? Very well.
Besides you bringing the Realm Embryo and surrendering to my southern Kayan, I also want your 2 daughters by your side to serve me as slaves."
The former condition was within everyone's expectations, but the latter condition was so vicious it exceeded everyone's imagination. The green-robed woman's face immediately darkened, her voice laced with suppressed rage. "You are humiliating us." Her 2 daughters, at the 3 calamities realm, a pair of peerless beauties, were to become slaves to be abused at will. This was pure deliberate degradation. Suppressed under Fang Chen's gaze and unable to lift his head, Feng Lingxi roared even more maniacally, then watched the netherworld's entire race be exterminated.
A murderous intent instantly flared in the green-robed woman's eyes. Such a despicable scoundrel, worthy of being the Southern Kayan's envoy.
The white fox beauty also clenched her silver teeth, her beautiful eyes filled with shame and indignation. With her and her sister's appearance, if they fell into Feng Lingxiao's hands as slaves, what miserable end awaited them? Need it be said?
They would likely be reduced to his playthings, trampled and kept as his exclusive possessions.
But she turned her head, looking at her mother with graying temples, then at the sorrowful clan members behind her.
Her heart, solid as a rock, suddenly wavered. If by sacrificing only herself, she could save 100 million lives, perhaps it might be possible. She took a deep breath, stepping forward with a resolute look, about to speak, planning to negotiate with Feng Lingxiao to take only her as a slave and spare her sister. But just as her red lips parted, Fang Chen, with a hint of calm smile, suddenly spoke. "Don't worry, in the netherworld, not a single person will die." Under his gaze, at the depths of the crevice where a grain of world soil lay, an inconceivable change had quietly begun.